Chapter 33 The Conquest of Makkah. With the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the blood feud continuing between the Banu Bakr ibn Abd Manat and the Banu Huda since the age of ignorance was abolished, the Banu Bakr had allied with the Quraysh and the Banu Huda with Prophet Muhammad. However, supported by the Quraysh, the Banu Bakr carried out an attack by night on the Banu Huda and killed several tribal members alongside tribal chief Ka'b ibn Amr. Sending a delegation to Medina, the Banu Huda requested help from the Prophet. The people of Huda had in actual fact viewed warmly Prophet Muhammad and the religion that he conveyed from the very beginning, had provided assistance to the Muslims in the field of intelligence in particular, and, by the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, all members of the tribe had embraced Islam. Prophet Muhammad sent a letter to the Quraysh asking them to abandon their alliance with the Banu Bakr, or pay the blood money for the members of the Banu Huda who were killed. The contrary would mean the breach of the terms of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, whereby hostilities between the Quraysh and the Muslims and their respective allies which was forbidden, and thus constitute grounds for war. Accepting neither paying blood money nor abandoning their alliance with the Banu Bakr, the Quraysh sent Abu Sufyan to Medina with the purpose of renewing the treaty. However, Abu Sufyan returned to Makkah without having reached a favourable outcome for his efforts in Medina. Deciding upon an expedition to Makkah, Prophet Muhammad started preparations for such, keeping the details of the destination a secret in order to avoid bloodshed and to catch the enemy unawares. Sending word to the Muslim tribes, he asked them to gather in Medina. So as to conceal the actual strength of the Muslim army, he asked some of the tribes to join the army along the way. All exits from Medina were banned, and, by means of watchmen being posted at important Makkah-Medina passage points, travel to Makkah was prohibited. The courier sent by Khatib ibn Abi Balta, who wanted to inform the Quraysh of the Muslims' preparations, was intercepted by the companions, which the Prophet assigned for the task after having been informed of this situation through revelation. Moreover, a reconnaissance unit led by Abu Qatada al-Ansari was dispatched to Batn al-Idam on the Makkah-Medina route in order to surprise the Makkans. Leaving Abu Ruhum in charge of administrative affairs in Medina and Abdullah ibn Maktum as his deputy, the Prophet set out from the city with his army on 13th Ramadan, 4th January 630. Due to the fact that he kept the destination of the military expedition secret, he continued on his journey without donning the pilgrim dress, ihram, at the fixed point in Dhul Hulayfa and camped at Maruz Zahran. The Muslim army reached 10,000 with those who joined along the way. Learning of the Muslim army's arrival at the gates of Makkah and experiencing great panic, the Quraysh sent a delegation headed by Abu Sufyan to Prophet Muhammad. Allowing the delegation to stay overnight in his headquarters and ensuring that they were able to watch the marching army squadrons, the Prophet invited them to accept Islam. Not wanting to risk confronting such an army, Abu Sufyan and his delegation returned to Makkah having accepted Islam. In view of this situation, the people of Makkah realized that they could resist the Muslim army no more. Abu Sufyan told the Quraysh gathered in the courtyard of the Kaaba that he had embraced Islam and that they had no other option but to surrender, and advised them to take shelter in Masjid al-Haram, the sacred mosque surrounding the Kaaba, or in their own homes. This essentially meant the surrender of Makkah, granting those seeking refuge in the homes of first and foremost Abu Sufyan and then Hani, Hakim ibn Hizam, Abu Ruwayha and Budayl ibn Waqa right of asylum, he honoured them and wanted to warm their hearts to Islam. Coming to Makkah after Abu Sufyan, the Prophet's uncle Abbas uttered the same words to the Meccans. The people then dispersed to the sacred mosque or to their homes. Planning to enter Makkah from 4 flanks simultaneously, Prophet Muhammad instructed his commanders not to fight unless they were attacked, not to pursue those who fled, not to kill those who were wounded or captive, and to meet him at the hill of Safa. He then commanded Khalid ibn Walid, who led the right flank, to move first. Entering the city from Lait in the south, wherein the squadron led by Safwan ibn Umayyah and comprising notable Makkans such as Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl and Suhail ibn Amr, as well as allied forces, were stationed, Khalid ibn Walid, defeating this force, crushed the sole resistance during the conquest. Those escaping with their lives asked for mercy, either by taking shelter in their homes or by putting down their weapons. In the skirmish, 12 or 26 Makkans and 2 or 3 Muslims were killed. The unit of the Ansar, helpers, led by Sa'id ibn Ubadah, entered from Makkah's west, while the left flank comprising the emigrants and led by Zubayr ibn Awwam entered the city from the north. At the head of the central squadron, Prophet Muhammad followed the Az-Zahir road from Makkah's upper northwest, and with the emigrants and helpers accompanying him, entered Makkah in praise and gratitude to God. He camped at Al-Hajjun and met the other units at the hill of Safa. 20th Ramadan, 11th January 630. Subsequently going to the sacred mosque, Prophet Muhammad greeted the black stone, kissed it, and circumambulated around the Kaaba. In his address to the people, he stated that Makkah was a sanctuary and that its status as such would remain, that he had annulled all the duties pertaining to the pilgrimage and administration of the Kaaba except for its maintenance and protection, Ijaba Sidana, and the service of providing water to travellers and pilgrims, Sikaya, and that he had assigned the former duty to Uthman ibn Talha and the latter to his uncle Abbas. Thereafter he declared general amnesty. He announced that those seeking shelter in the sacred mosque, in the homes of those individuals mentioned earlier, or in their own homes, as well as those laying down their weapons, were safe, that those taken captive would not be killed, and that no one would face prosecution. Prophet Muhammad displayed an example of forgiveness rare in the history of humanity, by forgiving the Quraysh who showed hostility to him and the Muslims at every opportunity for the past 20 years, despite the fact that he was now in a position to punish them. The day of conquest became at the same time a true day of mercy. The possessions and property of no one was touched, and prisoners were released. Only 10 people, known for their extreme hostility towards the Prophet and the Muslims, were excluded from the general amnesty. Only 3 of these people were executed. Some, like Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, fled, while others were forgiven. After purging the Kaaba, the symbol of belief in God's unity, and its surroundings from the idols, as well as the tokens of ascribing partners to God, Prophet Muhammad prayed 2 cycles of prayer within the Kaaba. He asked Bilal al-Habashi to climb to the roof of the Kaaba and recite the call to prayer. With Bilal's recitation, the Quraysh, men and women, came to the Prophet's presence and accepted Islam. These people, who were released without having been subjected to treatment as prisoners of war, were referred to as Tulaka, freed slaves. Meanwhile, those like Safwan ibn Umayyah, who wanted time to consider whether or not they would accept Islam, were given a grace period of 4 months. For the period in which he stayed in Makkah, Prophet Muhammad stayed in a tent in Al-Hajjun. When it was suggested to him that he stay in his own house, the Prophet alluded to his paternal cousin Aqil ibn Abi Talib, who was not Muslim at the time, having sold his house after the emigration to Medina, stating, "Has Aqil left us a house?" He did not consider taking back the house even though he was the conqueror of the city. With his words, "There is no emigration after the conquest," he expressed the fact that emigration to Medina had ended with Makkah's conquest and that emigration was no longer mandatory. It is recorded that the word Nasr, help, the eponym of the 110th Quranic chapter entitled Al-Nasr, indicates victory over all the Arabs, and that the word Fath, victory, in the same chapter points to the conquest of Makkah. In addition, the chapter Al-Fath alludes to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and accordingly to the conquest of Makkah. Staying in Makkah for some time after the conquest, Prophet Muhammad appointed Attab ibn Asid as governor of Makkah, and assigned Mu'adh ibn Jabal to teach the Quran and essentials of the Islamic faith to new Muslims, and then realized the Battle of Hunayn, as will be mentioned later, against the Hawazin tribes. Thereafter he returned to Medina with the emigrants. With the conquest of Makkah, the hostility of the Qurayshi polytheists towards Prophet Muhammad and the Muslims came to an end, and the obstacles in the way of the spread of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula's Hijaz region were lifted. During his stay in Makkah, Prophet Muhammad charged certain companions with the task of destroying the idols belonging to surrounding tribes. Among the idols destroyed were Manat, Suwa, and Uzza. He then began to organize expeditions for the purpose of inviting the city's neighboring tribes to Islam. On 8th Shawwal, February 630, he sent Khalid ibn Walid at the head of a unit of 350 men to the Jadhimma ibn Amir tribe living to Makkah's south. Khalid asked them to lay down their arms and accept Islam. After some dispute, they consented to putting down their weapons and stated Sabana, meaning "we have changed our faith," so as to express that they had become Muslim. However, believing that they had not taken up a strong enough stance, and taking into consideration their former enmity, Khalid ibn Walid took them as prisoner, handing them over to his soldiers, and commanded their execution the following morning. Carrying out the commands, the troops, members of the Banu Sulaym, killed around 30 prisoners. The companions from the emigrants and the helpers, however, released the prisoners, convinced that they were Muslim. Learning of these developments from a prisoner who escaped to Makkah, Prophet Muhammad was deeply grieved and distressed, and rebuking Khalid for making such a rash judgment as their status, exclaimed, "O Allah, I am innocent of what Khalid has done," thus showing his disapproval of such action. The Prophet then sent Ali to the Banu Jadhima in order to pay the blood money for those who were killed, and compensating them abundantly for any material damage inflicted on them, he alleviated their suffering and reconciled their hearts.